Savings, household savings, has declined from 1994 and is projected to plummet in 2021. So in other words, households in South Africa have accumulated vast amounts of debt that they're going to struggle to pay off.
The CRA has recently released a report on how the COVID-19 pandemic and the lockdown restrictions have impacted on South African consumers. Here to discuss consumer behavior during the pandemic and what this means for the South African economy is CRA analyst Gerbrandt van Heerden. Gary, could you firstly tell us how important consumers are for the South African economy?
South African consumers play a vital role to the country's economy, and we can see this by looking at final consumption expenditure. Now, final consumption expenditure can be divided between household consumption expenditure, that is expenditure by households or individuals on goods and services, as well as general government expenditure, that is expenditure by the government on salaries, wages, and other goods and services. Now, in 2020, household consumption expenditure as a proportion of the gross domestic product stood at 60%. That towers above the 20% that is general government expenditure. So what this means is that South Africa's economy is highly reliant on the expenditure by households. So if South African consumers come under pressure, that's going to have a tremendous negative impact on the broader economy.
Enjoying this analysis? Click here to sign up for our 30-day free trial for more content from the CRA.
Given the consumer importance for the economy, could you please tell us how consumers are faring financially in light of the economic constraints brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic?
South African households are experiencing major financial troubles, and we can see that by looking at various data points. So, for example, new passenger vehicle sales in quarter one of 2021 compared to quarter one of 2020 has declined by 7%. And that's already a huge red flag, because new vehicle sales is often considered to be indicative of household financial health and indirectly the strength of the economy. Also, total retail trade sales within the first few months of 2021 compared to the first few months of 2020 has declined by 0.9%. South African households can also be characterized as highly in debt with little to no savings. So since 2006, household debt as a proportion to disposable income remained above 70%. Savings, household savings, has declined from 1994 and is projected to plummet in 2021. So in other words, households in South Africa have accumulated vast amounts of debt that they're going to struggle to pay off, and they have inadequate savings. In addition to that, when you look at real GDP per head, that has declined steadily since 2016. So South African households and consumers were already getting poorer before the arrival of COVID-19 at our shores. That's mainly attributed to bad government policy. And so with consumers under enormous pressure, and given the fact that they play such a vital role in our consumer-driven economy, that shows that South Africa's economy is going to stagnate and decline in the coming years.
With household consumption under pressure, this means that expenditure is decreasing, and so businesses will continue to have a hard time surviving the pandemic. Do you know of any opportunities that exist to help businesses navigate through this tumultuous time?
So opportunities do exist for businesses to navigate through this crisis. McKinsey & Company surveyed South African consumers in June 2020 when lockdown restrictions were at their tightest, and then again in September 2020 when lockdown restrictions were eased significantly. And what they saw was that the proportion of consumers using online channels for the purpose of video conferencing, restaurant deliveries, or remote learning increased since June, even though lockdown restrictions were significantly eased in September. So that means that there's a shift in consumer behavior. Consumers are migrating to online channels to gain access to products and services, and businesses who can recognize this are in a good position to remain resilient during this pandemic. We can see this when we look at layoffs and furloughs in various sectors of the economy during the pandemic. So the sectors that were the least likely to have retrenchments includes financial institutions, media houses, NGOs, and insurance companies. These are organizations that can easily transition to digital activities. Other sectors, such as the tourism industry and manufacturing, which relies on on-site activity and in-person contact, those sectors have had a really tough time and have seen a rise in people being laid off or having their working hours reduced. So businesses need to recognize that there is a digital revolution happening, and they need to incorporate digital activities in some way or another in their business model in order to effectively navigate through this crisis.
If you'd like to access the report and you're a CRA client, head on over to our website, and there's also a link in the description below, and you'll access the full report of the latest edition of the Macro Review report dealing with the South African consumer under lockdown. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like and don't forget to subscribe to the CRA channel.